The following readings are from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. Each week we read from both scriptures as prescribed by Yogananda ji and by his guru Sri Yukteswar ji, who was guided by Babaji to compare the two scriptures to show the same underlying truths between them. This week's title is Self-Reliance versus Self-Reliance. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week we considered the need for attunement with God, with the Gurus, with the wisdom of others, until we make that wisdom our own. There is a strong and in fact valid belief nowadays in the need for standing on one's own feet rather than depending weakly on others to carry us by their strength. Swami Kriyananda was once asked, "What is the best yoga posture?" "That one," he replied, "which sets you squarely on your own 2 feet. Our strength must come from within. If that strength comes from the ego, however, instead of from soul consciousness, it is like a guitar string without its sounding board. The notes it emits will be thin and feeble. Our strength must come from within, but must be coupled with recognition of our inner link with broader and higher realities." The Bhagavad Gita says in the 10th chapter, "Everyone in this world whose life is glorious or prosperous or powerful, know that his achievement is but a little spark from the great sun of my effulgence." Jesus, in talking to his disciples, emphasized also the power of attunement with his own consciousness as a ray of the divine, for this ray had descended already through him in response to their devotion. It was a sign that God was already listening to them with receptive attention and did not require to be wooed in that way any longer. In the passage preceding the one that we read last week, Jesus said, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now we are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except ye abide in me." This was the meaning of Paramahansa Yogananda's counsel also, when speaking more intimately to the disciples of the need for attunement with him. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
This first reading is from Whispers from Eternity by Paramahansa Yogananda, a book of prayer poems. This one is entitled, "Make Me a Smile Millionaire." O silent laughter, smile thou through my soul. Let my soul smile through my heart, and let my heart smile through my eyes. O Prince of Smiles, be thou enthroned beneath the canopy of my countenance, safe in the castle of my sincerity, where no rebel hypocrisy can lurk to destroy thy presence in me. Make me a smile millionaire, that I may scatter thy rich smiles freely upon sad hearts everywhere. This is a very important, there are so many important things in this reading to keep in mind for the spiritual path. The first being, what is the most important yoga posture? And Swami Kriyanandaji said, that one which enables you to stand on your own 2 feet. You'll have to please forgive me the irony here that I'm saying this to you while having to sit down. I can't stand on my own 2 feet. I injured my foot, unfortunately, and so I've been hobbling around, sort of like that yoga posture that allows you to stand on your own 1 foot. And so, but I have some comfort in that I'm using this cane, and Master used to walk with a cane, not because he needed it, but because it was his version of a danda. It reminded him of, being a Swami or a yogi in the Himalayas carrying the danda, and of course the danda being a constant reminder of the spine, and to keep the spine straight. We've been going through a bit of testing lately. When the microphone decided to come apart in my hands, I thought, my gosh, it's just one more thing that's been happening. It's a pretty minor thing and easy to fix, but just as we had wheat poisoning last week, Maya, not content to stop there, gave us food poisoning this week. And so, unfortunately, both of us got quite sick, and I have gotten to the point of being well enough to sit before you. Unfortunately, Dharmini is still struggling with the symptoms of it. So we got sick from something we've never been sick from before, and it's just kind of continued. So I don't know, unless somebody is slipping something into our food without us knowing. It's been kind of an odd period. Someone was saying, well, it's been a lot of difficulties lately in the past 2 or 3 weeks. I said, yeah, I stopped counting at 15. There have been a lot of blessings, also a lot of help. But, sometimes these things happen, and it's nothing to get worried about or excited about. In fact, sometimes we can worry that God isn't thinking of us. God isn't remembering us. But when we see so many things going wrong in our life, we know this can't be random chance, that maybe God is behind it. Not to punish us, not to make us uncomfortable, but to just say, either it's time to burn off some karma, which is always true, or else, as Master said when Swamiji asked him, when they were clearing up the lake shrine and making it beautiful, but there were these bugs that were flying in their faces and their eyes and irritating them, and Swamiji said to Master, why in such a place of beauty do we have to have these terrible pests, these bugs? And Master said, it's God's way of reminding us that this world is not our home. It's God's way of reminding us to keep coming to Him. So when enough things go wrong in our lives, we remember that, well, after all, this is not my home. It doesn't have to be perfect. At other times, it can be a reminder to call on God. I remember when, for example, thank you, Ramesh, I'll take that. Perfect. When I had a friend who was looking at astrology charts. And anybody who was coming to him, he was not an astrology reader by any means, but it was just kind of a hobby. And people found out he had this hobby, and so they always would come to him saying, okay, if you have this hobby, practice it on me. And anybody who came to him, it was always the same thing. Shani. Saturn here, Saturn there, Saturn somewhere. Saturn transiting, Saturn on the Lagna, born with Saturn, or I should say born with Saturn. Or, Saturn Dasha, always Saturn, Saturn. And he began to notice a pattern that people were sort of like, can you tell me something? Like, when will it end? Because he never saw people, Jupiter here, Guru's blessings on the whole chart, because when you have Guru's blessings on the whole chart, you're not curious about what's going on in the chart. There's no questions because everything's just fine. And in fact, see how clever I am that I have been able to do all these things. Meanwhile, you're getting all this extra support. So no one ever calls to say, why is everything going great in my life? And when will it end? Maybe a yogi would ask that. But so in the same way, these difficult things, they help us to call on God. As Haridasji has said, sometimes Divine Mother gets lonely because we're not calling on her enough. So she grabs our finances because she knows it'll get our attention. She takes the money and suddenly, full devotion. And so just remember that when things are going wrong, sometimes it's because Divine Mother is saying, okay, why don't you talk to me a little more? And as it said in the reading, Master said, it says we should remember that our power comes from within. We should rely on our power, but our power comes from within. And Master said to his most advanced disciple, never forget where your power comes from. And he said, I won't, Master, it comes from you. And he was a very wealthy, famous businessman who everybody looked up to, but he knew his power came from Master. Of course, if he had said, right, Master, you're giving me all the power, Master would have said, well, it's God giving you the power. But on the other hand, God sends the Guru, and the power becomes very focalized in the Guru. In that way, Master Swamiji related the Guru to the transformer, like the transformer outside our building here. The Guru is like that, not in the way that it constantly explodes, but in the way that we can't plug the power lines coming into our house from the dynamo in the city directly into the house. The house couldn't take it, but the transformer transforms the current. It changes the current, makes it so that we can use it. And so the same with the Guru. He helps us. He helps us attune to God more. He helps us be open to God more. And that's what we talked about last week, attunement and the importance of attunement. And that teaching, Swamiji is balancing, lest it be taken so far off-center, by saying we also have to be self-reliant. We also have to be strong in ourselves. We have to be able to stand on our own 2 feet. And in fact, as he said, this is a very common thought in the world, that I will do it myself, I don't need anyone, I don't need any help. But when that strength, source of strength, so-called, comes from ego, then it is very precarious. It is just up and down. One little gust of wind of a broken leg or something, and then our whole strength is gone. And this is the challenge that happens to people in the beginning if they rely too much on ego, which is to say all of us start off that way, unless you were sort of born self-realized, and I won't ask for a show of hands here. You don't want to raise your hand. Remember what Master said, he who says he is God isn't, and he who says he isn't. So, but that we try it on our own and we do well for a while. And then one thing knocks us down, or 2 things, or 10 things, or one colossal thing, and then we say, uh-oh, okay, I'm missing something, or I need help. You see, we have to realize that we can't do it on our own without God. Why? Because God is the only show in town. God is the only thing happening. I was saying last week that why do we have to merge in God ultimately? Because we have come from God, and because of duality we return to God. And of course that's true, but another truth is there's nothing but God. The carpet is God, the pillows are God, the rain is God, the ACs are God. All of it, there's nothing else happening. And so really you could say we're just dissolving, merging into the God all around us. There's no other show in town. There's nothing else happening. So what's so fun, though, is when we start to feel that connection inside, whether it's to God, whether it's to the Guru, that hunger that the devotee has to have. All devotees have a spiritual hunger, you could say, a yearning, a desire to be with God. It starts perhaps on a human level before we realize it's the spiritual path, as a desire for human love, or as a desire for success and sort of everyone's applause, which is to say everyone's acceptance. The first thing you find when you do succeed is that far from everybody accepting it, now a lot of people who used to be happy with you are now jealous. And now they're, and whereas they used to accept you when you were just nice and at their level or below, now, okay, here comes Mr. Fancy Pants, you see? And sometimes you lose friends that way. And so if we ever find that in ourselves, it's just jealousy, to know that it is an ugly thing to let go of. Be happy for someone else and their success. There's room for all of us in this world to get what we want. It's sort of like, going to Saravana Bhavan and wondering, are they going to run out of dosa? They're not. There's dosa for you. So if somebody else got their dosa first, fine. Then yours is coming. But the thing is that what we find as soon as we begin to venture onto the spiritual path seriously is that all those things I wanted, that acceptance, that love, that happiness, that safety, that all really comes from inside. Because if it only can come from outside, then it will change like the weather. I will have this for a time and it will be great, and then I will not have it, and then it will be not great. Or I will have it for a time and it will be great, and then I will have it for longer and longer, and it will just become boring. And where's the new excitement? Where's the new expansion? I'm just sort of, on this plateau. And similarly, when we've gone through really heavy experiences, it can be difficult, especially when they go on for years. But then when we come out of them, it's a great lesson because we realize that wasn't forever. Felt like forever. Felt like I was trapped. Felt like nothing. I couldn't do anything about it. And sometimes you can't. Well, outwardly maybe you can't. Inwardly, anything that's happening to us is what? Karma. So whose karma? It's our karma. It doesn't mean, again, I have to always say, it's not necessarily punishment. It's not necessarily it's our karma to suffer. So you can't take anything difficult being a karma as therefore, again, a bad, horrible, crippling thing. That's all your fault. Don't. That's not necessarily what it means at all. Often it's those difficult things that make us seek answers inside because it's the only place left. Once God closes all the doors outwardly, the only door left is inside. You could say the door of our hearts even. We have to just, okay, it's nothing else is working, so let me try to go inside. As Prasanna was saying last week, because there's some odd Saturn transit happening right now, Saturn's message is to detach. Always detach. Not to not care. That doesn't mean the same thing. But detach that this should be a certain way. The way I want it. Or it should not be the way I don't want it. First to just say, what is it? And then to say, God, can you help? See, detachment doesn't mean, okay, God, help if you want to. It doesn't matter to me. I'm detached. It's all fake when people say that. Because detachment brings joy, it brings freedom, it brings courage, it brings energy, and it gives the ability to work with the situation and try to improve it because we're not so afraid that it's going to go the wrong way. We can think straight. And also, what do we do if we're detached? What are we detached from? Those things outside of us. So we detach and we go within. And that's what Prasanna was saying last week, that we go within. And so whenever things aren't going well outside, just check, okay, have I meditated today? Have I meditated enough? Have I meditated with love? And I don't mean things aren't going well because you didn't meditate or because I didn't meditate. I don't mean that. I just mean, this is not working. Excuse me. Let me get myself working first. Because it's the only thing you have any shot of controlling. And then from that, then we tend to move more in harmony with God's rhythms. Then you find all kinds of things working out. I mean, in the beginning of the spiritual path, it's kind of fun to notice them. I remember I always, whenever I was late, I would be very agitated. And sometimes I would just pray, can you help, can you help? And then, I would get to the meeting 10 minutes late. And I'd look and nobody was there. And then the other person would come and, sorry, I'm late. And I say, oh, that's okay. I forgive you. It's fun the way Divine Mother bails us out. You see, it's not so much that we live in harmony with life because we're so perfect. It's that she makes up for all the things we do wrong. Again, she bails us out. You know, it's like when children are learning to walk. I don't know if they have them now, but back in my day, sometime in last yuga, they had these little carts with wheels that you can put the child in, and so the child can walk using the strength of its legs, but it keeps its balance and its safety. And it's kind of round like this, so it has kind of a bumper, so you can't get too near the spikes and all the sharp things. It sort of keeps you protected. And so are we. Just the same in our lives. Divine Mother has us in one of those things, but we just sit and cry and say, "Why don't you help me?" And she says, "My God, all this help I'm giving you." So we realize that all that fulfillment, and that's the word, the power, the joy, the safety, the love, all of that is a fulfillment, to fill something that is empty. And that emptiness is inside of us. That's where the hunger for God comes from. And nothing will fill that except God. And so it's our own nature, as I was saying, because everything is God. So with that hunger that all devotees have, they learn. And why do I say all devotees have? Don't all people have it? Of course. It's just that when one seeks that this thing will fulfill me, that I was debating with someone because she was saying, my daughter has to get married and then she has to have a child, and if it's a daughter then she has to get married, and then the daughter after that has to get married, and as long as they're all married then I'll be okay. Now, I have no right to say that because I'm not a mother. And as a mother, listen, there's a lot of worries that we have. I am a school teacher. I had to deal with children a lot, but still not the same thing. But still, that sense of this, everyone has to be lined up and safe and taken care of, then I can relax. But better to relax first. It'll help the whole situation. One of my friends worried so much about her children that she couldn't sleep, which gave her hypertension. And then her children were worried about her hypertension. So I said, "I have an idea." And she said, "Don't say it." And so I said, okay. So the thing is that we realize what makes us devotees is all of that outward seeking. We start to seek inside. And that hunger makes you a devotee, because we can say, the purpose of life is what? And fill in that blank. And when that blank, what comes after is God, finding God, merging with God, which gives us that eternal happiness, then we are devotees. And until that time, someone is a devotee, you could say, in hiding, or an unconscious devotee, or their devotion is in remission. It'll come. Because we try, if only by process of elimination, by experimentation, that this didn't work, finally something that works. And you find this also in people as they get older, that they tend to calm down, they tend to not be as uptight about things that they were so focused on, so worried about, and they realize that it's all gone okay, or even if it hasn't, I survived, I recovered. But why wait our whole lives for that? When the realization comes to us early on in life that we should seek God. What I noticed before I say that, as the reading says, we have to stand on our own 2 feet. And so we become as devotees, we also can become, and ought to become, very self-sufficient. It's very practical to be a yogi. I mean, first of all, the most practical thing of all on the spiritual path that the yogi has is technique, practices. And so our self-effort, you could say, on the spiritual path as yogis is manifested first in our meditation practice, in our practice of Kriya Yoga. That it's not enough just for us to pray to God and hope that He'll answer. And why? Because again, if your devotion is at such a level where I just feel that I'm touching the edge of His his garment. I'm just like this close. That's wonderful when we feel that way, if we do. But the problem is it doesn't last. You know, there's a stomach ache or a headache or a phone call or just a nothing. Just kind of a blah feeling. And so it is the techniques that help us to return to that state. Meaning this is the answer to someone who says, I don't want some crass mechanical techniques in my devotion. But it's sort of like saying, I will cook without following a recipe, which is fine if you're cooking what you know. But what if you're trying something new? Do you sort of say, let's see, how much hing do we add? You know, better, measure it out. Why not have some help to make it good? So it's the same thing, not a perfect analogy, but no analogy is, so that's how I excuse myself. So the idea that we use these techniques ourselves in cooperation with the Guru, in cooperation with God. I don't mean we meditate and then God blesses us. Meditate with God. Meditate with the Guru. Remember that wonderful thing that Master said. He said to the disciples, your spiritual progress is determined primarily by the company you keep. Literally translated, you'd say the people you mix with, the people you spend time with. And I don't mean to look around and go, oh my God. No, I mean, in other words, when you spend time with spiritual people, we can't help the circumstances that we're born into that are a part of our karma that we're working out. That's fine. But what choices, when we have the choice, what choices do we make? And again, the blessing that we have, I was saying in the prayer this morning, the blessing of these techniques, the blessing of this path, the blessings of the Guru's presence, but it's also the blessing of all of us together. That Master has given us a spiritual family, that He's given us a home to come to, that He's given us a place to recharge. I was talking with Ashwini and Vidya the other day, and we were talking about how healing Ananda can be, and how coming to an Ananda place anywhere, in any city, because Ashwini had just gone to Pune along with Prasanna and a few others, that just going to a center, going to a community, going to an ashram, just there's a healing that comes. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But remember, it's not necessarily every ashram you will feel that in. There's also going to your ashram, which is to say your home, the place where you belong. That's where you get fed the most. Anyway, so Master said your spiritual progress is determined primarily by the company you keep. And then one of his disciples who was there asked him the obvious question, but sir, what if I'm alone? What if I keep no company? So then how can that determine my spiritual progress? It's really not fair in a way, you could say. And Master said, am I not always with you? So how wonderful Master is telling us. He's always with us. But He can be always with us more. Can't be more than always. But always with us in a deeper and deeper sense, and always in the sense that we become more and more aware of His presence. That's the growth. That's our work. That's our direction. To listen to Him more, to ask Him more, to talk to Him more, to open ourselves to Him more. Again, that's what attunement is. Swamiji for years said that for years he used to pray, let my thoughts be thy thoughts. That anything that he thought, he wanted it to be Master's thoughts only. And this came after a period where he was editing the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, that wonderful poem that Master had given a commentary on, if I have this right. I think I do. And after diving so much into Master's commentary, and then, he published that book, he said it was such a feeling of closeness with Master and being so trying to draw his thoughts or being in tune with his thoughts that he didn't want it to stop. And of course, I think he was with Master a lot and all the time, but still, he said this, that he just said, from now on, I just want to continue in this way. Let my thoughts be thy thoughts. And then some years later he said, I realized it's not enough. I don't want it just to be my thoughts, but my feelings, any flickering of consciousness. I want it to be just from you. Now, I have to add, why? Why say that? Of course, we can understand the disciple-guru relationship on paper. We can understand that yes, this is that's what a good disciple would say. But why? And why was Swamiji so motivated? I think it's very simple, because of the bliss that comes from that, the joy that comes from that connection. I'm sure there's more to it. I don't mean I understand, but I'm sure that must be a part of it. Anyway, he said so. That joy of being connected to Master. And that's what motivates us always on the spiritual path. It really should be joy. In other words, we should do those things that produce joy. And we should avoid those things that take away from our joy or diminish our joy. Now, I don't mean that we should look at our habits and say, oh, look at these habits that I have. They take me away from joy. How insincere I am. I don't mean that. Habits we can't help. In other words, we can't help directly in the sense that they have energy behind them. But we can help in the sense that we are making positive habits now. Anytime you make a mistake out of habit, try to correct it. If you can't correct it directly, say, with the person, if you misspeak or you can't undo some mistake, then do a positive thing for someone else. Or make an extra effort in a different direction to make up for it. It's not to balance the ledger, but to form that positive direction of energy. Master said habits can be changed in a day. So it isn't that they have to take a long time to overcome. He said you've been concentrating in one way, concentrate in another way, or even the opposite, or the balancing way. And what motivates us to do that is because we've done it wrong enough times that we know. So I don't want that feeling again, that embarrassment or that regret or that sort of, I told him what it was and I told him how it was and I said it. And we have that satisfaction. And yet there's always a little pinch of guilt that you didn't have to say it so harshly. Someone once was chanting a chant in a public gathering at Ananda from a different spiritual path. And really, it's what people do in the privacy of their own home is one thing. But, when we're all together, we should focus on the thing that has brought us all together, which is Master, Ananda, and so on. And so someone went up to that person and said, and stopped them. Stop it. And then they, chant door of my heart or something. I don't know what they said. And they came back and I think Prasanna told me the story, and he said that they said to one of the monks there, he said, what did you do? He said, I stopped the chanting because Deviji said, Jyotish and Deviji said, we should not chant those chants. And Premdas said, did Deviji say it like that? Of course not. So that's the thing. So it's often the way we say something is much more important than what we say. You can handle anything. I was with somebody just the other day, and I was saying, just say, we're so sorry. If you have to tell someone no, just say, we're so sorry, and it's a problem from our side, but we unfortunately can't accommodate your request in this way. And so then someone new came in and the person, said to the person, I'd like to do it in the way we couldn't do it. And the person said, no, not available. We're so sorry that it's not available. It should be available. It's no. Ila. So, okay, well, anyway, like I've said before, why create unnecessary trouble for ourselves that way? So, this... when Master came to Sri Yukteswar, he said, I had picked up some false teachings from some of the other ashrams or teachers that I had visited. And among those false teachings was that a devotee need not overly concern himself with outer responsibilities or sort of concrete things of the world, because he is in God. And he said, in Sri Yukteswar's presence, I was cleansed of this false notion right away. I'm not saying it exactly as it's written. It's written better than that. But still, that Sri Yukteswar, it was very practical also, extremely practical in his approach. And there's a deep teaching behind that, because when there are certain parts of our life that are unclear, well, there is nothing sacred about unclarity. And God is clarity, high energy, awareness. You could say, what is self-realization? It is expanding our awareness until it reaches endlessness. But an expanding awareness means awareness on all levels. People would ask Master practical questions, he would answer them. Same thing with Swamiji. He would put his mind on something and he'd be able to ask very intelligent or perceptive questions about the situation. And it wasn't as if, you say to him, we're watching, this loan that we've taken for this property, but with the rising interest rates, do you think we should refinance? And he says, Om Bhur Bhuva, just sort of like retreating into the self. If I talk enough Sanskrit, maybe you'll leave me alone. It wasn't that way. And it was wonderful for me to see that, because again he was aware, you could say. He was informed on all levels, and this was also not something that I had at all coming into the spiritual path. I came from a very mental perspective, which tended not to, very intellectual. I tended not to deal with things on the physical plane. So, if the plumbing broke, I just prayed. And if the car broke, I just cried. What is there to do? Nothing. It's over. Nothing you can do about it. And so I found that it's not that way at all. That the more energy you get, the more meditation makes you more intelligent, makes you more calm, which means when you're calm, you're able to use your intelligence. Again, just viewed from a purely mental point of view, the advantage of calmness is that you can think straight. How many times on exams have we made careless errors, they're called? But they're not careless, it's that I was too nervous and I made a mistake, I missed something. And then if I hadn't been nervous, or as you learn to meditate, you become less nervous, you don't make those mistakes, either because you catch it or because you learn, I can solve it this way, but I can also solve it this way, to check it, to make sure that both paths lead to the same answer. And so it's very important for us to be practical, to be self-sufficient, to be able to do whatever is in front of us. It doesn't mean don't ask for help, but also learn. I was fixing computers in a situation. I was part of a small staff, and my job was to fix the computers. And people would always sort of, the printer's not working, and I would come over and say, well, what's up? Don't teach me, just fix it. Okay, so then I would fix it. And then my computer, the keyboard is not working. Do you see how, just look, I'm really busy. I need to type. Can you just fix it? So, okay. So that's what I did. I walked around and I fixed things. I had my revenge by having my lunch hour. Knock, 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 my computer. It is my lunch hour. So I had some sanity. But of course, if they said, but I'm desperate, then I would put the sandwich down and go help them. But then a friend of mine joined the staff, and he said, the computer's broken, and I said, okay, I'll take care of it. And I noticed as I walked over to the computer, he followed me. And then as I started doing things, he said, what are you doing? I'm fixing it. He said, no, but how are you fixing it? And I said, you want to learn? And he said, yeah, of course I'd like to learn. He had a lot of skills in carpentry, electrician, plumbing, all the physical planes, a lot of other things too. But he was, why not? Why not learn that so I can fix it myself? He said, and then, magic words, I don't have to bother you with it. And so I was so thrilled. But what I took from that was not, see, here is one who understands. It wasn't that. It was that, I don't have that attitude, though, with practical things like carpentry and plumbing and electricity and so on. And so I started to learn from him. that when things were broken, I would try to figure out how to fix it. I was laughing because of this microphone thing when it fell apart. Because during COVID, what happened was this cable, well, not this cable, but the cable that preceded it, fell apart. It didn't break, but it became unscrewed in a way in which it should not have unscrewed. And these microphone cables work with sort of there's three wires that go through them. And when it fell apart, the three wires, the three prongs all just were like this. They always have a certain shape and so on, and they were just all gone. And what was I going to do? Wade my way through COVID to go to the shop and ask them, can you please fix this? Of course, the obvious thing, order on Amazon a new cable, undeliverable to your area. Just like, whoa. Okay. In fact, when the pandemic began, some of you may remember, Prasanna was actually staying here at the center for, was it 6 months? Amazing. 6 months. His father was away. And we were so concerned about quarantine in that time, and we said if we're all quarantined together, then at least we can be around each other. And we were doing so many things online, as you know, if you were there, of course. But anyway, there was, your neighborhood may be sealed, your building may get a big red flag, it's just sort of marked for the plague, don't go here, it's all death inside. And then we heard somebody going down the street. Streets were empty, no traffic, no nothing, and we heard someone going out making this loud announcement, and we were thinking, this neighborhood is now under quarantine, all of you will die. And then we said, Prasanna, what's he saying? He said, he's selling fruit. Param, Kirai, it was just so. Anyway, so what was I going to do with this cable? So, the one thing we needed to do these broadcasts was a microphone. And this was the cable, but it was broken. And I had the, of course, reaction. It's broken. But I noticed it wasn't like severed or that. So I thought, okay, let me just try to put it back together. So I sort of put the things and, and it was quite difficult because of, like, you put this and this one would go out and then that one would go out and then they would fall apart. Anyway, and when I put it back together, and I felt very proud of myself for doing what, a 6-year-old could do, put the pieces back together, but I don't know about these things. And so I plugged it in and there's this terrible sound, as I didn't know that the order in which the 3 pins goes matters. And so I was plugging them in. I'm just lucky the whole thing didn't explode, or that you were hearing this story at my eulogy or something. So anyway, so then I went online and Googled it, which of course I should have done in the first place. Google allows us to be self-empowered. And so then it said, this one has to go there. This, this is the ground. It has to go there. And anyway, I did it, and then we had our cable back. But I would never have had even the courage to try, except maybe out of desperation, because it's just that you learn so many little things that are needed so that you can go forward. And I was, we've learned a lot about the plumbing here. And someone said, how do you know the plumbing in this building? I said, because it breaks. You want to be able to fix it. We run out of water. And so you want to switch the things. It's not that I set up the plumbing. It's Saint Abdul who did that, our plumber. But he made it very easy for us. But still, you have to turn this switch and turn that switch. And then magically you have water again. And again, when you run out of water, you're motivated. You're paying attention. And so this kind of thing, why not learn it? You see? So on the spiritual path, we find as soon as we begin that we become more balanced. I don't do that, but God is in that. So why not? Or someone has told us, you're too stupid to understand it. Leave it to me. And we say, well, I may be stupid, but not too stupid, because I'm able to follow the logic pretty well. As I said, meditation, Kriya, makes you more intelligent. It makes you more aware. It makes you more calm. It makes you easier to handle all these things. So when these things come, some complicated, worldly, practical problem, Start with God. Pray, be attuned, open to the Guru, definitely. Just say, can you please help out? And then say, but also, what can I do about it? And as opposed to holding it like this, look, the problem has come to our doorstep. Maybe there is something in it for us to learn, something in it for us to solve. And it doesn't mean we even have to solve it, but the struggle may bring enough energy to it that then it will change. But really, there's nothing that we have to say no to. Say, this has come to me, fine. Let me see what I can do about it. Again, maybe we don't like to ask people for help, so maybe that's how we heal, is we learn to ask for help. To just say, help me, but so that I can learn. Teach me. And so, just as Prasanna was saying last week, that I was telling you what he said, that he was in a difficult situation. He felt God's presence and blessing, and then he also naturally asked the question, but now what do I do about it? Meaning the situation. Not just, that's okay, you're going to be fine. Okay, I'm fine. As I just sort of float towards the meat grinder or something like that. No, what can I do about it? Change course. Do something. There's a fun Native American prayer that it says, call on God, but row your boat away from the rocks. So in other words, even Master said that, because he was reported to him that some disciples were being very impractical and driving very rashly. One woman was in her vehicle. And she just said, Master will keep me safe, Master will protect me, doesn't matter. And Master heard this, and he said, let her try to drive off a cliff and see what happens. Because you don't want to, they say, don't tempt God. You don't want to make anything an excuse for being irresponsible. Why? For nothing else, unclarity. And let me add that when we have clarity, it's very calming also. Because then we know. Because when we have unclarity, it's something we're trying to hide under the rug. And anytime more things come up or questions come up, what about that? Never mind, we're not going to discuss that. So this lump under the rug gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Until someone walks in and goes, whoa, shh. Don't say it. Don't bring it up. And so we just clean it out. And usually it takes, 15 minutes, less than that, to just take a look at it and go, okay. Hold on to God's hand if you're afraid. I've been afraid plenty of times, and to face it, and it turns out it's okay. It's just fine. So ask for Master's help in every detail of your life. Don't feel that this is my spiritual life, and then this is the crass materialism I have to deal with. Or what is more frequent, when we are in the crass materialism, and someone says, you've read Autobiography of a Yogi, haven't you? Anything? Autobi? Postagama? Just we forget everything. No, I'm focusing on, as Swamiji said, something serious. He said, why is it that whenever people start to discuss money, their mouths become very straight and serious? We're talking, and their tones become hushed, sometimes reverential. We're speaking of money. God is in money too. Although Swamiji had this wonderful, he wrote the play, The Jewel in the Lotus, and there's a young boy who's very devoted and wants to live for God, and he has a father who is a merchant and wants the son to take over the family business, and he's very, very staunch, strong in his ways. And so then a storyteller comes to town and begins telling stories of this wonderful saint, Paramahansa Yogananda. It's at some time in the future. And so the storyteller gets everybody excited with, thrilled with these stories of Master, and the young boy is thrilled, and he says, you see, the father, what I have been telling you has been correct all along. God is in everything, which means God is also in money. So, the more you have of money, the more you have of God. And I am the supreme devotee, and so on. So, it's but as I said, when you are dealing with money, ask God for help in that too. I mean, with everything. But then apply yourself. I remember one devotee was sitting with Swamiji and someone else, and he said something related to a situation they were facing, and Swamiji said, "I'm so glad you're with us. You're intelligent, and you think things through." And I don't know if he was encouraging that habit or that tendency in the person, or if he was, I don't know if he was pointing out to the other person, but it was a good thing to apply your intelligence, to think things through. And to experiment. And also don't feel you have to do the way things that they've always been done. That's another thing that happens, that when you do start to do things on your own, you start coming up with new ways to do them, or a way that suits you perfectly. One simple, superficial example is that we've often found that when we've tried to buy a software package to do some small job, we can never find something that does everything that we want. It does a little bit, but then it doesn't do that, or it has this, but it... And so at Ananda, we usually end up just writing our own software to do, because it does then exactly what we want. And it's not that complicated. It's not like, oh, so you have your own operating system that runs your computer, and you have your... No, it's not that. But little things I'm talking about. So especially in the early years of Ananda, business people would come and say, "Oh my God, this office setup is a nightmare, and your processes are so..." They would just marvel that people at Ananda, I wasn't there then, but it would have been me too, "You're all so stupid." And then they began to marvel even more and yet it works. And so they couldn't believe that, well, it's actually working well. And we would find that anything that we did, maybe a little different here or seemingly a little inefficient there, but it would be very efficient for us. And it had its own logic. But that isn't really a fair attitude. If you really want to be fair, you look at something and say, does it work? You don't say, it is not what I would have done with my expertise. You see, there's this sort of strength in the established wisdom, and especially my established wisdom, which you should listen to. It's just ego. But there's that temptation of the world that everybody knows, everybody agrees. Who are you? You have to have a degree before you can even speak. And so Swamiji was telling the story of devotees get caught up in that too, that they start to get enamored with, oh, but this guy is so amazing, and that way of doing things, if we brought that here, it would be so great. Maybe it would be, but we don't have to be so enamored with it. If it works, it works. And he showed Swamiji on the cover of some magazine. This man said to Swamiji, look at this man. He's huge, hugely popular in the world right now. And Swamiji said he was concerned for the person. Anyway, the next week that man was in prison. It's just the way these things go. So be in God. Be in God first. Trust in God to do things, to help you to learn to do things, and also in your way. Okay? And again, stand on your own 2 feet.